So, welcome to Liberal Viewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup. Thanks for joining me. I've got a couple dozen clips for you on several different topics for what should be an interesting show tonight. As always, this is my weekly broadcast of the best clips from the Sunday morning news analysis shows from the corporate media here in the United States, along with my commentary between the clips. And this week, in addition to the Sunday news shows from the regular Big Five outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News, I'll also have my regular quasi-news clips from HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher, and the clips will be on several topics I'll be covering tonight, including the breakdown and the talks between the United States and Iran, and the continuing controversy over Obamacare, a little bit on the typhoon damage in the Philippines, and even a little on the upcoming 50th anniversary of the assassination of JFK. But I want to start out with the election results from the governor's races in New Jersey and Virginia, and what they say about the growing split among Republicans between the Tea Party and the Wall Street establishment. And Bill Maher pointed this out last Friday on HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher, with a little help from journalist John Heileman. And I'll start you off with that clip here.
Possible that the okay with this Frankenstein monster that they create.
Sorry about that.
That the old school Republicans, the Wall Street Republicans, were a little spooked by the debt ceiling debate and the fact that they almost did the debt ceiling thing, which would have lost them a lot of money. So they were okay with this Frankenstein's monster that they created until it started to throw little girls in the lake. And then they were like, you know what? If we're going to lose money, we're going to have to take you out back and shoot you. You are not useful to us anymore, Tea Party.
I'll give you a number that demonstrates that. In Virginia, Ken Cuccinelli, the gubernatorial candidate for the Republican side,
The Cooch.
The Cooch.
The Cooch who hated the Cooch. It's amazing.
I could not say that, but you can, Bill. The Republican...
Why? You're a senator?
He got outspent 4-1 in that race. This is the first time a Democrat that a same party has won the Virginia election in an off year that the same party is the president, right? So this is a winnable race for Virginians. This candidate was so nutty from Republican donors' point of view that they let him go totally underfunded against a beatable Democrat because they were, in fact, totally panicked. And the debt ceiling fight and the government shutdown killed Ken Cuccinelli among federal employees who live in Northern Virginia who voted overwhelmingly for Terry McAuliffe.
I think John Heileman there is right about the growing split between Republican money and Tea Party candidates like Virginia Attorney General Ken Cuccinelli, who took these extreme stances on abortion, contraception, and even consensual sodomy. And he was also famous as Attorney General of Virginia for leading this unsuccessful lawsuit to find Obamacare unconstitutional. But of course, over on Fox News, despite the loss of this warrior against Obamacare in a winnable race, Chris Wallace framed the issue as a win in the fight against Obamacare right from the beginning of Fox News Sunday, the very beginning, as you can see over in this clip.
I'm Chris Wallace. Election 2013 is in the books, leaving Republicans convinced running against Obamacare is the key to victory.
This race came down to the wire because of Obamacare. That message will go out across America tonight.
So yeah, Cuccinelli lost, but on Fox News it's a win in the fight against Obamacare because the race tightened at the end, like a lot of races naturally do, especially when there's a third-party candidate in the race. And I think Democratic Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz gave a much more reasonable analysis of the outcome over in Virginia over on CNN's State of the Union with Crowley over in this clip.
When it comes to Obamacare specifically, Obamacare did not have anything to do with Tuesday's outcome. You
don't think it made the election closer? You don't, I mean, because...
No, I really don't. Because if you look at the results a year ago and the results are now, they were about the same.
Right. If you look at 2014, if you look at this through the prism of 2014, you don't think that Obamacare will weigh heavily on Democratic elections?
I think Obamacare because Americans have been feeling the benefits since 2010, where young adults can stay on their parents' insurance until they're 26, where on January 1st, if you have a pre-existing condition, like I do, as you know, as a breast cancer survivor, the peace of mind that those Americans are going to have, knowing that they can never be dropped or denied coverage for that pre-existing condition, the preventative care that's available without a copay or a deductible, those are benefits that Americans have already been feeling and will increasingly feel as Obamacare is fully implemented. So I think, actually, Candy, that Democratic candidates will be able to run on Obamacare as an advantage leading into this.
Well, I hope that Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz is right there, that Obamacare is going to end up being a positive in future races, especially in 2014. A lot of it depends on whether the website is fixed by the end of the month, like President Obama and his administration promised. If that doesn't happen, then I think the pressure to delay Obamacare, which was one of the big issue for the Republican shutdown of the government, that's going to be maybe overwhelming, at least to delay the penalties if people can't use the website to sign up. So I hope that Debbie Wasserman Schultz is right, and especially by the time you get to 2016, maybe more of those benefits will be showing. I think eventually that it will be beneficial, but that's a prediction for the future, and no one can really be sure about that. But I also want to show you, in addition to the Virginia race, of course, there was Christie won in New Jersey, and he, of course, was there talking about Obamacare. Governor Christie did what they call the full Ginsburg, named after William Ginsburg, the attorney for Monica Lewinsky, who went on all the Sunday morning shows during the whole Monica Lewinsky Bill Clinton scandal. And so now going on all the morning shows is called doing the full Ginsburg. I guess it's better than me calling it doing the full Lewinsky. But Christie went on all the shows, and he said a lot of things that were kind of repetitive, and of course he got asked about what his thoughts are on Obamacare a lot. I'm going to turn my microphone down a little because I think it causes a little bit of a ringing in the background. That might be a little low. Sorry, adjusting okay, that should be better. So I want to show first Christie. I think he's starting to get together his stump speech running for president and his talking points on what he's going to say about Obamacare. And the first place I'll show that is over on Meet the Press. And I'm not showing the intro so much from David Gregory, although David Gregory kind of brought into this idea that I'm going to get to a little later about President Obama having lied when he said, if you like your health care plan, you can keep it. And you'll see that Governor Christie plays into that when he's talking about his talking points against Obamacare over in this clip.
Listen, I think Obamacare was a mistake. And I've said that right from the beginning. I think it's a failed policy. That's why we did not institute state-based exchanges. And you can see exactly why when you see the disaster that's happening right now. The fact of the matter is the president didn't tell folks the truth about what was going to happen with their own private insurance policies. And what I urged them to do for the last 2 weeks when I've been on the campaign trail is tell people the truth. That's the thing they expect, and I think that's why we've gotten the support we've gotten in New Jersey. Because whether it's good news or bad news, I tell folks in New Jersey the hard truths they need to hear. And even when they disagree with me, David, they've come around to support me because they say at least this guy is looking us in the eye and telling us the truth. I think the president failed that test, unfortunately, on Obamacare, because that's unfortunate for the country. But I never have favored Obamacare. It's a failed policy. We all know that, and the fact is that the president needs to own up to it and tell folks the truth.
All right. So yeah, you can see Christie's talking point there is going to be that he tells the truth. He's a truth teller. He tells the hard truths other people don't want to say in Obamacare. So his big lesson from Obamacare is that Obama didn't tell the truth. And I'm going to get into that a little more in a little bit about why I seem to be one of the few holdouts saying that when President Obama said, if you like your health care plan, you can keep it, he was not lying. I'll get to that a little bit later, but I want you to remember what Governor Christie said there regarding how he's a truth teller. He tells the hard truths that other people don't want to tell, and I'll tell you why I want to do that. I want you to remember that when I get to some later clips about his positions on some issues. But I also want to show you kind of a repeat of those same talking points, a little bit different since he was on different shows. This one, I think this was Face the Nation, where he was asked a similar question about whether his position on Obamacare, and he did hit the Obama didn't tell the truth talking point pretty hard there, and I'll show you that.
For that, the fact is that the president didn't tell the truth. It turned out not to be true that people could keep their insurance policies no matter what, that they could keep their doctor no matter what. And we need to confront that issue, and the president needs to deal with it in a head-on way. That's why I didn't do a state-based exchange in New Jersey to implement Obamacare, because anyone who's managed anything or run anything over the course of their careers could see that this was a train wreck. And I was not going to get the people of New Jersey involved in this train wreck in that way. And so that's what we've done in New Jersey. And the president needs to deal with what he said and how it turned out not to be true.
Now, about what Obama said not being true, I'm going to show you. I actually put a link down in the video description to the full text of the Obamacare law, the Affordable Care Act. And I want to show you Section 1251 of the Affordable Care Act. I think last week I showed a Health and Human Services website where they explained what a grandfather clause is. Now, if someone asked me to write the phrase, if you like your health care, you can keep it, into a law in like legal jargon, what I would write is what it says in Section 1251 of the Affordable Care Act, and we put that up here for you. It's the preservation of right to maintain existing coverage. No changes to existing coverage. In general, nothing in this act or an amendment made by this act shall be construed to require that an individual terminate coverage under a group health plan or health insurance coverage in which such individual was enrolled on the date of enactment of this act. So if an individual has a health care plan that they like, nothing in this law stops them from being able to enroll in the policy that they have. And that even though the act creates all these minimum requirements for health care plans that in a lot of ways makes them better, gets rid of all these holes in the coverage that people don't even know they have, like lifetime caps or types of illnesses that aren't covered. And but even though they may have plans like that, this says that Obamacare is not going to change your ability to choose that plan if you were enrolled in that plan before the passage of Obamacare. So if you like your health plan, you can keep it. Now, of course, that doesn't tell you whether you may like your insurance company, but it doesn't tell you if your insurance company is going to like you. It doesn't tell you if what's going to happen in the future. It doesn't promise that your insurance company is going to stay in business, that policy will be offered in perpetuity. The way I look at it, it's kind of like if I were to say, if you like your spouse, you can keep him or her. Obamacare won't change that, and then Obamacare passes and your spouse divorces you. Is that Obamacare's fault? Because you still like your spouse, but your spouse decided they don't like you. And so I think people just misunderstand what the grandfather clause is and what it means if, when you write that into the law, because health insurance companies have been creating and canceling policies forever, and Obamacare didn't create any new right to force your insurance company to stay in business or to your employer not to fire you. And actually, I want to show you former Congressman Anthony Weiner was over on HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher, and he sort of addressed this. And I know for a lot of people, Anthony Weiner isn't the best source, and I have a few problems with him, but I'm going to actually show some interesting ways that Bill Maher addressed the Anthony Weiner controversy in a clip a little bit later. But first, I want to show you how Anthony Weiner talked about Obama's promise and how people misunderstand it. And this is from last Friday's HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher here.
Something kind of humorous about this idea. Well, the president said we was going to keep my plan. Well, no. Theoretically, if you become a felon, you don't keep your plan. Or if your company goes out of business because they can't afford health care anymore, you don't keep your plan. I mean, people are getting a little bit literal about this statement, and I'm not quite sure what benefit we bring to having, oh, did he apologize enough? Should he apologize a little bit more? The fact of the matter is, you know, it takes a great man to build a barn, but any jackass can kick it down. And what we have now is this process that the Republicans are lining up with no alternative of their own about how they plan to bring down costs and how they plan to provide health care, not health insurance, but health care for all Americans.
Well, I think he didn't, yeah. He didn't lie, he evolved on honesty. I think that's what.
So yeah, there, Bill Maher doesn't get it. He didn't lie, he evolved on honesty. That's like a sarcastic comment, and that I've seen a lot of people, even on the left, even in the corporate media, who don't seem to understand or who are buying into this Republican talking point that if you like your health care, you can keep it, means somehow that you gain this right to force your insurance company to always offer the plan. You know, even on my LiberalViewer Wednesday live Q&A, after the Q&A was over, I noticed someone posted this comment over there. So has LiberalViewer admitted that Obama has been exposed as a bald-faced liar, or is he doing the contortionist Kool-Aid stretch to try to justify it? And, I mean, sorry, I don't get that, because what kind of contortions do you have to do when it's like written right there in the law? I don't know. Sometimes I think that there's some things that people who aren't lawyers don't get. That normal people don't understand how laws are written, or maybe that they don't include things that simple language gets turned into law, and you know, that, I don't know. Maybe in the comments you can tell me why it is that I'm wrong, that Obama, and you can explain to me how Obama was lying, even though what he said is written right in there into the law like that. So I also, of course, that whole, since even people on the left and in the middle are saying that Obama lied on this, of course, over on Fox News, it's basically a presumption. It's assumed that Obama lied when he said that if you like your health care, you can keep it. And I want to show a couple clips from over on Fox News Sunday that showing what I mean about the assumption. I'm sorry, I'm loading up the clips right now. I think this may be the last week where I have to load them up 3 clips at a time. I'm planning on upgrading the software imminently, so I do want to show. This is the first clip here is Chris Wallace talking. This is the intro to this really biased segment where they had these 2 small business people who I think were like rich white guys. They never revealed what their incomes were, but at one point the third guest, who was like an advisor to the Obama administration on Obamacare, he pointed out that they might be eligible for subsidies if they made up to $94,000. And Chris Wallace, of course, never asked either of these 2 guys how much money they made, but they both said they didn't qualify for subsidies. So you can draw your own conclusions there. But here you can see Chris Wallace in his intro just assuming that all these policies have been canceled because of Obamacare. And then I'll show you why I think that's a bogus for one of these guests. But here's the first clip here.
More than 3.5 million Americans have now received cancellation notices for their health insurance because of Obamacare. The president apologized to them this week, but what are folks outside the Beltway saying? We're going to hear from 2 of them now. Stephen Curry joins us from Chicago. Kade Joyner is in Atlanta. They're both businessmen who have lost their health care plans. With us here in studio is Ron Pollock, Executive Director of Families USA, who's working closely with the White House on the rollout of Obamacare. Steve, let's start with you. And we want to put up the letter that you received from Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois canceling your current policy. You were...
So I'm going to leave that policy up there. I hope you can read that letter, but if you look real close, it says the new healthcare law goes into effect January 1st, 2014, and Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Illinois is creating brand new plans with important benefits and features. This means basically your old plan you have now is no longer available for renewal as of December 31st. Now, does that mean that because of Obamacare, the plan was canceled? Now, of course, Blue Cross Blue Shield has written this letter to try to make it look like that's the case, but that could just be the insurance company trying to place the blame on someone else, and I'm very skeptical about that, especially it doesn't say because of Obamacare the plan was canceled. It just says Obamacare takes effect and there are all these important new benefits, and then it says this means that we're going to stop offering this plan, but it doesn't say one caused the other, and so I'm pretty skeptical of that. And then the next clip here shows President Obama apologizing for the few people who may have gotten health care after Obamacare passed, because that clause I showed you, it only grandfathers in plans up until when Obamacare passed. So when he said if you like your health care you can keep it, that was true all the way up until when Obamacare passed at least. But he apologized maybe to the few people who bought health insurance since March something 2010 in the last couple years, or at least for their situation. And he never really said he lied, but of course they showed a little clip of it, and then they showed one of these businessmen just complaining about it, which goes for balance, I guess, on Fox News, and I'll show you that clip here.
President Obama apologized this week directly to people like you who lost your policies, who lost your insurance policies. Let's take a look at what the president had to say.
Even though it's a small percentage of folks who may be disadvantaged, it means a lot to them, and it's scary to them. And I am sorry that they, are finding themselves in this situation based on assurances they got from me.
Kade, your reaction. What did you think of the president's apology?
Well, he is right about one thing. It is scary, but it's only scary because he's made it that way by changing the rules in the middle of the game. Now, we were told countless times if we wanted to keep our current insurance, we could, and that was just not true, as I found out. But this president forced a piece of legislation out that wasn't ready for prime time. He pushed it through Congress, and now he's pushed it on the American people. And the real victims are people like Stephen and myself.
So yeah, there you can see Chris Wallace using these two people who lost their health insurance supposedly because of Obamacare, and that guy, I think his name was Kade Joyner, Kade, that businessman from Georgia there. He said he had his insurance policy before Obamacare passed, so by law it could not have been canceled because of Obamacare. That doesn't mean that his insurance company didn't try to pass it off that way, but and of course the two people who they put on Fox News are people who lost their insurance. They don't put anyone on there who is getting better insurance, or the 40-something million uninsured Americans many of whom are going to get insurance because of Obamacare for the first time. None of those people are given faces and names and stories on Fox News. It's only these two white businessmen who are claiming that they lost their health insurance because of Obamacare. But I did notice that there was a little bit of balance over on Fox News, but it had to do with Christie. I mentioned that he did the full Ginsburg, so that means he was on Fox News Sunday as well. But there's a lot of mixed feelings in the Republican Party about Christie because he's such a moderate, although his views aren't really that moderate. But I didn't see that much of an attack on Christie or his downside on any of the other shows in the introductions they did. It was actually on Fox News where they spent the most amount of time talking about what conservatives aren't going to like about Christie. So I guess maybe they're playing to their base a little better than Christie's playing to the Republican base. But anyway, I'll show you this report from Fox News campaign correspondent they call him Campaign Carl Cameron, and here he is talking about the downside of Christie in this clip.
Cut New Jersey taxes, but the state's 8.5% unemployment rate is still a point higher than the national average. He's cultivated relationships with Jersey celebrities not known for close ties or shared values with the right. The cover of Time calls him the GOP's elephant in the room. The Interior headline uses a Springsteen hit for a campaign pun.
The next president of the United States, Governor Mitt Romney.
Christie was passed over for vice president last year in part because of potential fallout from his days as a lobbyist and as U.S. attorney with a reputation for lavish travel spending. Gruff and unapologetic, he's snapped at reporters, politicians, and the public repeatedly.
You conduct yourself like that in a courtroom, your rear end's going to get thrown in jail, idiot.
Pro-life and opposed to same-sex marriage, Christie did not veto a gay marriage law in New Jersey this year and has few ties to the Tea Party. That could put him at a disadvantage in 2016 in the early voting states dominated by ardent social and fiscal conservatives against Tea Party darlings like Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, Marco Rubio, and others. Christie is credited with quite literally uniting Jersey in a storm. But uniting Republicans across the country is much different and a lot tougher, especially considering the divisions between the Tea Party and the GOP establishment right now. Chris?
So there you can see that Fox News really delved pretty deeply into the downsides of Christie in terms of conservatives, and I want to add in the next clip I'm going to show you after I add in these next three is going to also be from Fox News Sunday, where they ask him about gun control. Fox News Sunday was actually the only program where they asked him about gun control, and I will get this. And you can see he kind of equivocated. You can see him trying to move away from the gun control measures that he has signed as governor of New Jersey and start pivoting for what he's going to say to the base of the Republican Party when he runs for president. Over in this clip.
Well, listen, Chris, I think that, when you look at what we've done in New Jersey, we want to control violence. And some of that may involve firearms, but a lot of it doesn't. In fact, my focus has been on making sure that mental health is done in a much more aggressive way in New Jersey. Every time we see one of these incidents happen across our country, it is almost exclusively with a deeply disturbed person at the helm. And what we need to do is be much more aggressive about how we deal with mental health issues in this country. So I'm for violence control.
So he's for violence control and the whole mental health issue. That's what you hear from the NRA and the most pro-Second Amendment Republicans. So he's definitely getting his gun control talking points ready for the Republican primaries. But I think his biggest issue or his biggest talking point is going to be that he's going to put a new face on the Republican Party that can win, and he talked about his victory. Let me see real quick. I wanted to show you over on I may not have that one. Yeah. Basically, he was doing his victory lap on the Sunday morning shows this morning, and he wanted to talk about what his victory meant. At first, I'll show you that he won some impressive percentages of segments of the population that the Republican Party doesn't do that well with. And Nora O'Donnell, who was co-hosting Face the Nation over on CBS, pointed out how well he did in those parts of the population, and you can see how Christie went right to his talking point about he is a new face of the Republican Party and is going to be able to talk to segments of the country that Republicans normally can't talk to over in this clip.
66% of independents. You won 32% of Democrats, 51% of Hispanic voters, and 21% of African American voters. Is there a lesson there for the rest of the Republican Party?
Yeah, the lesson is to govern, Nora. The lesson is to govern and to show up. And let me explain what I mean. On governing, it's about doing things, accomplishing things, reaching across the aisle and crafting accomplishments. And ours, I think, are significant. 143,000 new private sector jobs in the last 4 years, a $2.3 billion business tax cut to help create those jobs, reforming teacher tenure for the first time in 100 years in New Jersey, reforming a broken pension and benefit system that's going to save $120 billion over the next 30 years, and spending less in this budget year, fiscal year 14, than was spent in New Jersey in fiscal year 2008, 6 years ago. So you govern. All those are bipartisan accomplishments because I have a completely Democratic legislature. And showing up, what I mean by that is that you can't just show up 6 months before an election into groups that have not normally voted for you and expect that they are going to vote for you. I've been working on this for 4 years, going to places like Irvington, New Jersey, one of our cities where I got 4.7% of the vote 4 years ago. I did a town hall meeting there a year and a half ago. There were more people in the church than voted for me in 2009. But you go there, you listen, and you present your views, and that's the way you bring people in to your movement.
So yeah, there are the two big arguments that Christie is going to be making. First, that he has governed successfully, that he's worked across the aisle with his Democratic legislature, and that is a little bit, his record isn't all that great. He's going to have to do better the unemployment rate in New Jersey is, I think, one of the top 10 states in the country in terms of unemployment, and there are some other problems in New Jersey. I think he's going to have a problem with the governing argument that he can govern that well, unless he does something much better in the next couple of years. And he may be, if we're all so lucky and the economy improves in the next couple of years, as it may well, then he may ride that tide a little too, because New Jersey will go along with that. But that second part about how he can talk to people who Republicans don't normally talk to, and those somewhat impressive numbers, although I'll show a limitation on how well he did in with Hispanics and other groups, and even with African Americans. But that I think you're going to be hearing a lot more about Irvington, New Jersey, and that church he went to, where there were more people there than voted for him from the town of Irvington. Because doing the full Ginsburg on all 4 shows, I heard about Irvington, New Jersey in every single show. And I'm going to show you one more example. This is, I think this one was from Meet the Press, where he also talked about what his election, what does his victory in New Jersey mean for the future of or what's the meaning of his win. And I'll show you that clip here.
And I think what the election showed was that if you want to attract a majority of the Hispanic vote, if you want to nearly triple your African American vote as a Republican, what you need to do is show up. You need to show up in those places where, David, I did a town hall in the city of Irvington in my state about a year and a half ago. I got 4.7% of the vote in Irvington in 2009. I went there, and there were more people in the church where I did the town hall than voted for me in 2009. You go and you show up and you listen, and you start to make your argument about your policies. And I think the results of the election show that that's the kind of engagement that we need as Republicans all across the country, to listen and to show up in places where we haven't gotten a great amount of vote before.
Some of the skeptics.
So yeah, there you can see Christie again telling the story of Irvington, where he shows up and talks to people who, in a town where more people showed up in the church than voted for him, and that's why he got such great results from Latinos and African Americans. And I want to explain one limitation on that as I load up the next 3 clips, and I apologize for that as usual. Let me see. And I'm going to get you a few more Christie clips, I think, here. 14. Yeah. But before that, I want to show you a quick clip from Representative Donna Edwards, who was on This Week with George Stephanopoulos, and she pointed out one of the things about Christie's win in New Jersey that I didn't see talked about anywhere else, but it's important to remember that there are some limitations on why, the meaning of why he did so well, that you can see over in this clip.
I want to throw a little cold water on the Christie thing. He won with 38% of the vote, record low turnout in that election, so I'm not really sure how much it says about what needs to happen nationally.
That's right. When Christie did that well, it was in an off-year election that has low turnout, and what Representative Donna Edwards didn't say there is he actually manufactured part of the election to decrease the turnout, which is when Senator Lautenberg from New Jersey died. They had to have a special election to choose his successor, and the most logical thing for Christie, or the most conservative money-saving thing to do, would have been to have that election at the same time as the governor's election, but he actually had it just a few weeks ago on a whole different date. So when Cory Booker, this African-American mayor of New Jersey, who eventually won the Senate seat, was running, he, of course, increased the Democratic turnout, and if he had been running in the same election that Christie was running, that increased turnout probably would have depressed Christie's numbers, so he couldn't be doing this full Ginsburg going around with this victory lap trumpeting his win and what it all means, and how it shows that he is, a new type of Republican who can win a blue state. And I didn't show any clips but that include this number, but if you match up Christie with Hillary Clinton in New Jersey, Hillary Clinton is beating Christie in New Jersey even right now when he's at this height of popularity, having just been reelected as governor. So that's also kind of a grain of salt to take the whole Christie message with there, I guess. But the other clip I want to show you has to do with I showed a clip of John Heileman over on Real Time with Bill Maher earlier, and one of the reasons he's been around is he just wrote this book with another journalist, Mark Halperin, where they got a lot of sources to talk about what happened during the 2012 election. They're kind of famous for this 2008 book, which I can't remember the name of the book, where they talked, a lot of the juiciest quotes were about the vice presidential selection of Sarah Palin by John McCain, and that there was also kind of some juicy material in this new book, Double Down, about the vice presidential selection team of the Romney campaign that eventually selected Paul Ryan to be the vice presidential running mate. But it was kind of unprecedented. The team that vetted the vice presidential candidates for the Romney campaign actually leaked their vetting material for Christie, and I played a couple clips about that last week. And why that's so unprecedented is it really breaks the trust. The vice presidential candidates, when they come to talk to the Republican nominee, they're supposed to say everything that could be a problem so that it doesn't come back to bite the candidate sometime later in the campaign. And as in exchange, they're not supposed to ever reveal any of the information, but basically the whole vetting file was leaked by some of the people who worked for the Romney campaign, who I guess don't like Christie. And you can see George Stephanopoulos asking Christie about the unprecedented leak of his vetting file and what he thought about it over on This Week, ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos in this clip.
News this week because of this book, Double Down, about the 2012 campaign, and one of the authors, John Heileman's on our roundtable. Extensive section on the Romney vice presidential search process. They leaked your file. Never seen that happen before. And had concerns about a number of things in your background, including this passage on the man who supervised your background check, a guy named Ted Newton. And he says this, he says, there are people now surveying the sum and substance of what the team was finding. Newton told his colleagues, if Christie had been in the nomination fight against us, we would have destroyed him. He wouldn't be able to run for governor again. When you look below the surface, Newton said, it's not pretty. I know you think that all of these issues have been vetted, but a possible run for president brings a whole nother level of scrutiny. Are you prepared for that?
George, listen, first off, political advice from people who ran the Romney campaign is probably something nobody should really give a darn about. So let's start with that. But secondly, all these issues have been vetted, and if I ever run for anything again, they'll be vetted again. If you're in public life, that's what you have to understand. But listen to Governor Romney. And what Governor Romney said when he spoke last week was that none of this caused him any pause at all. And so I'll take Mitt Romney's interpretation of all this rather than some, paid political consultant who was, trying to make himself famous, obviously, in the book.
So that was Christie's reaction to the people who leaked all that stuff about him. And I guess that if he does run for president, that's all going to be vetted again. And I don't know how serious that stuff is. I don't know, I kind of had my audio going in the background during the clip, and I like that part where he said, don't take advice from people who ran the Romney campaign. That was kind of the snarkiest part of it, but I enjoyed that anyway. So I also want to show you, I pointed out earlier how Christie is going to bill himself as the truth teller. Remember, I showed you earlier that he says he's the one who tells the hard truths that people don't want to hear. Of course, he wouldn't answer questions about his positions on some of the hot button issues for Republican base voters. And one of those, of course, was the immigration, where, Christie's been pretty good on immigration in New Jersey as governor on some issues. Like, he's one of, not only does he support the Dreamers getting at least protection from deportation or some sort of path to citizenship. And if you don't know, the Dreamers are people who were brought as illegal immigrants or undocumented immigrants to the United States as children, so through no fault of their own, and some of them were brought as babies and they consider themselves Americans, never knew anyone else. And anyway, Christie, kind of like here in California, they decided to give in-state tuition to undocumented immigrants who were brought here as children, and that's basically anathema to the Republican base. And so Christie has had a pretty moderate record on some immigration issues, but he wouldn't even say that he supports a path to citizenship in comprehensive immigration reform when he was asked about it a couple different places, including on This Week with George Stephanopoulos. And I'll show you that clip here.
Path to citizenship.
George, I don't get to make those determinations. The folks in Washington, D.C. Well, listen, I can have an opinion about lots of things, George, but we're not going to go through all that this morning, are we? It's 2013, and I just got elected, and I just got elected the governor of New Jersey again. So the fact is, I've already said what I believe, which is it's a broken system and it needs to be fixed. Now let's get to work doing it. And
it's a broken system that needs to be fixed, so let's get to work doing it. That is a very slogan-y position on immigration, but it doesn't really answer any important questions about the details of the policy. And I looked it up. In New Jersey, there are about 500,000 undocumented immigrants. So as the governor of New Jersey, he really should have some position. It's not like it's some federal issue, some foreign policy issue. And that's actually the next clip I'm going to show you after I load up the next three here, which is after kind of punting on the issue of a path to citizenship over on Face the Nation in the interview with Nora O'Donnell. He also punts on the issue of Iran, and that, at least as governor of the whole, I'm governor of New Jersey, so I shouldn't have a position on that. Makes a little more sense than on the whole path to citizenship issue. So I'll show you the clip from Face the Nation, where after being asked by Nora O'Donnell to comment on what because in a minute I'll show you some of the breaking news on the talks between the United States and Iran, how they broke down over the weekend. But here's Christie punting on giving his position on Iran on Face the Nation in this clip.
On Iran, a deal to freeze Iran's nuclear program has fallen apart. How big of a setback do you think this is?
Nora, listen, you know, I'm the governor of New Jersey, and I think there are a lot of people you could have and probably will have on the program who are significantly better briefed on this than I am. And I think when guys like me start to shoot off on opinions about this kind of stuff, it's really ill-advised. So I'll leave it to Secretary Kerry and the folks that are in charge of this to make decisions about where we go. And then once they put something together, if they do, then I'll make a judgment on that. But it's just, I'm not the right person to be asking that question to, with all due respect.
But you're a national political figure. You're a leader in the Republican Party. You may someday run for president. Do you have a view about whether Iran should continue to enrich uranium?
Well, listen, like I said, I think the folks who are involved in this on a day-to-day basis should be making those kind of opinions known publicly. For me, I'm the governor of New Jersey, and my job is to run the state of New Jersey, and it's just something I think, in all seriousness, Nora, that folks in my position who spout off opinions off the top of their head just wind up doing more harm than good. I'm just not going to engage in that.
Well, that sounds kind of honest, but or that may play well with some people, but he did punt on giving his position there, and of course with Iran it makes a little more sense than when he wouldn't take a position on a path to citizenship. But I wanted to get a little bit more into what happened with Iran over the last couple days. It looked like there was going to be an interim agreement where there was going to be a slight loosening of sanctions as sort of a good faith measure while Iran did a freeze on its program, didn't like go backwards at all, but just didn't go forwards, or that's kind of the way I understand it. But then the whole possible interim agreement leading up to some final agreement in the future broke down at the last minute. And I want to show from This Week with George Stephanopoulos, reporter Terry Moran explained how the talks broke down at the last minute over in this clip.
What a whirlwind of talks it's been. Just a few hours ago, there was this huge anticipation, even a giddiness in diplomatic circles, that this historic first step confidence building deal was about to be done. And what happened, as you point out? Well, the French happened as Secretary Kerry concluded marathon talks directly with Iranian officials. Unprecedented sight there, really. The French stepped in and said this proposal wasn't tough enough. They wanted more restrictions on Iran's ability to enrich uranium, control of a new reactor that might produce plutonium, and they called a halt to it all. The Iranians have responded on Twitter. Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei is on Twitter, naturally, and he said that French officials have been openly hostile to the Iranian nation, but the talks will continue.
So it was the French. The French stopped the deal. There was going to be a deal between the United States and Iran, this interim agreement that would have some loosening of sanctions and some freeze of the nuclear program, but it was the French that stopped it all, and that led to kind of this amusing exchange with Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, who's trying to look as conservative as possible, and I won't play any other clips from him, but I like this little exchange between him and Crowley over on CNN's State of the Union about the French stopping the deal over in this clip.
We seem to want deals worse than anybody else in the region. Thank God for France, and thank God for pushback.
Well, there's words you haven't heard recently. Thank God for France. But let me ask you.
Yeah, the French are becoming very good leaders in the Mideast.
Thank God for France, and that seemed kind of like a diss against France from Crowley there. That thank God for France aren't words you hear a lot. So I don't know if I have any viewers out there in France, but I want to show you how you're being dissed on the corporate media from CNN here in the United States. I don't know if they play that over in Europe, but of course that wasn't the only comment on the situation in Iran. There was also a couple more interesting clips. One was kind of like the dumbest question of Sunday morning, I guess, was from Nora O'Donnell, and I don't mean that in any sexist way, I guess, but when you see the question, and she had Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu the program, and she asked him about this whole U.S.-Iran deal, the interim agreement. She asked if he had lobbied against it, and I thought that was kind of the answer to that was kind of self-explanatory. But anyway, I'll show you that clip here.
Did you help lobby against this deal?
Lobby? Yes, of course I'm speaking lobby. That's an understatement. I speak up against it. I'm expressing, as I said, not only the concerns of Israel, but the concerns of many, many in the region. Some of them say it out loud, some of them say it behind closed doors, but I'll tell you, this is a broad feeling here, broad feeling that Iran is, might hit the jackpot here, and it's not good. It's not good for us. It's not good for America. It's not good for the Middle East. It's not good for Europe either. I don't think it's good for Russia or China. And by the way, I've spoken with the leaders of most of these countries.
So yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little harsh there, but asking Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu if he lobbied against a deal between the U.S. and Iran that loosens sanctions on Iran, I think that is kind of a dumb question. But I want to play one more clip that came out of the whole Iran news from this morning, and one of the guests over on CBS's Face the Nation, Bob Schieffer, was co-hosting with Nora O'Donnell, and the part he did was this interview with Leon Panetta, who used to be defense secretary, used to be a congressman. I think he budget director, and he was chief of staff of. So he's had a lot of important positions, and he gave some information about the conflict between the United States and Iran over the years that I'd never heard this before, and the conclusion he draws doesn't make a lot of sense. And anyway, there are several things about this statement that don't make sense to me, but I'll talk about that after I show you what he said over on Face the Nation in this clip.
The Iranians not only, obviously have promoted terrorism, but they've directly engaged in terms of conflict. The Iranians actually shot down one of our drone planes that looks over that part of the Gulf, and we sent a clear message to them that we were going to have F-16s be able to accompany our drones, and if they try to go after our drones again, we're going to shoot them down, and they backed off. So I think it's important. The lesson I guess I draw from this is you better operate from a position of strength if you want to deal with the Iranians.
Now, one of the things I don't understand about that clip is what is the purpose of using a drone if you're going to accompany it by F-16s? That doesn't even... I mean, the purpose of a drone is to be undetected and to stay up there for 24 hours, and they have all sorts of advantages. But if they're going to be accompanied by F-16s, they're totally useless. And I'm not sure how that story shows that Iran responds to strength. I mean, shooting down aircraft that's in their airspace. I mean, I'm no apologist for Iran, but of all the things they've done, that seems to me one of the least. It gives them the least culpability of, I mean, that's kind of like every nation has the right to protect their own airspace. So that seemed kind of like a weird fact to throw out into the media. And anyway, I found it interesting. Speaking of weird facts thrown out into the media, something that came up on Meet the Press, because of the whole Iran situation, Secretary of State John Kerry was on, and I couldn't bring myself to show any of the clips from him about Iran because his answers are, trying to make the show interesting. And ever since he ran for president, I think he's been well known for giving long-winded, boring answers. So I couldn't show any of that, but there was one interesting thing that happened, and it happened because of the upcoming anniversary of the assassination of John F. Kennedy. That was November 22nd? November 22nd, I'm pretty sure, 1963. So the 50th anniversary is coming up, and over the past couple weeks, I think I've shown some clips about that. And I guess NBC is doing some sort of documentary. Tom Brokaw, and he interviewed John Kerry, who said some things about it that were somewhat newsworthy. And first I'll show, this is a little out of order because they interviewed John Kerry first and then showed the clip of what he said to Tom Brokaw second. But first I'm going to show what he said to Tom Brokaw in the upcoming documentary that you can see here.
To this day, I have serious doubts that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. I certainly have doubts that he was motivated by himself. I mean, I'm not sure if anybody else was involved. I don't go down that road with respect to the grassy knoll theory and all of that. But I have serious questions about whether they got to the bottom of Lee Harvey Oswald's time and influence from Cuba and Russia.
So that's kind of interesting. He said that to Tom Brokaw, but that was for this documentary. But when he was appearing as Secretary of State over on NBC's Meet the Press this morning live, of course, he wouldn't comment or expand on what he had told Tom Brokaw. He seemed almost embarrassed that he was being caught having expressed that opinion. And, you know, I'm not an expert on the assassination of JFK. I saw the Oliver Stone movie and I've read, some articles about it, but there is some weird, unexplained. I don't think the Warren Commission did a good job of investigating the things that John Kerry's talking about. I'm not sure that the what do they say is absence of evidence of absence or whatever. I'm not sure that the fact that they didn't investigate the influence of Cuba and Russia on Lee Harvey Oswald means that they had that influence, but I did think it was interesting to see John Kerry say that. But of course, when he was live over on Meet the Press, he wouldn't expand on it. And I'm sorry, I'm just loading up the next three clips real quick here. Here is David Gregory trying to get John Kerry, appearing as Secretary of State, talking about Iran, to also talk about the assassination of JFK without any success over in this clip.
Before you go, you gave some comments in light of the 50th anniversary of the assassination of President Kennedy to NBC News that have now been widely broadcast and reported on. And in those comments, you said this: "To this day, I have serious doubts that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone." That certainly would be surprising to a lot of people that those are your views. Would you care to elaborate?
No, I just have a point of view, and I'm not going to get into that. It's, it's not something that I think needs to be commented on, and certainly not at this time.
Do you think the conspiracy theories, his involvement with Russia, motivation from the Soviet Union or Cuba, are valid at some level?
David, I'm not going to go into it. It's just inappropriate, and I'm not going to do more than say that it's a point of view that I have, but it's not ripe or worthy or appropriate for me to comment further.
So yeah, I guess there John Kerry seems almost embarrassed. At least it seemed to me he seemed almost embarrassed to have been caught making those statements, or at least he didn't want to say them when he was appearing as Secretary of State. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And speaking of John F. Kennedy, with the 50th anniversary coming up, there was this other interesting clip over on HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher I want to play for you, where Bill Maher was talking. I mentioned Anthony Weiner was on the program, and he said, Bill Maher said some things to Anthony Weiner about his scandal. I mean, I don't know if there's anyone who doesn't know about it, but Anthony Weiner had to resign from Congress when he was caught texting sort of lewd photos of his crotch area in underwear, and I think there were even some photos where he wasn't in his underwear. It was like naked photos of his penis or whatever, and I don't know exactly how far it went, but it's not like I searched the internet for that. But anyway, he had to resign from Congress, and then he just ran for mayor, and it turned out that he had, using Twitter, had sent these pictures even after he said he was done, and so he relapsed into this bad habit or whatever. And I thought it was interesting the way that Bill Maher put this in a different perspective than I've seen it in just about any other place in the media, and he even made a comparison to JFK that I will show you over in this clip.
But I had a big feud with Chris Matthews because I was criticizing him for criticizing you when he is so in love with John F. Kennedy. And I said, where is the perspective here? What John F. Kennedy did was so much more dangerous and so much more consequential for the nation, and Clinton too. Do you understand what I'm trying to get at?
Well, look, it is hard for me to do any meta-analysis of this thing because I've done so much damage, and frankly, I take responsibility for all the things that I did, and it's hard for me to do analysis of it when I've let so many people down. Look, I did these things. At the final analysis, it's not so much, people can look at it through whatever lens they want. I did them. I wanted to give the voters a chance to hear what I wanted to do for the city, but ultimately the judgment that they passed was that you're wrong, that what I did was pretty bad. And
but
so,
even the way you're talking, I did these things, like, it wasn't that awful what you did. This is what I'm saying. There's no perspective in this country. Are you kidding? I mean, you had a hobby that was a little offbeat. You know, I get it. And also the way that people act like, you know, he did it once and then he did it again. Like, no one has ever relapsed to a bad habit. It took me 8 years to quit smoking.
So, yeah, there's part of what Bill Maher's saying there that I kind of agree with, especially considering some of the scandals that other politicians, not just JFK, but even, you know, contemporary politicians, people still in office, David Vitter from Louisiana, who had a prostitution scandal, and he's married, and why is it worse to have sort of I guess what Anthony Weiner did is he had kind of like cyber sex or close to cyber sex relationships with women that started with these propositions online. And I mean, if I were his wife, I would be real upset, but as a politician, compared to what some other politicians have done and come back, you know, Newt Gingrich divorced his wife with cancer to marry his mistress, you know, served her divorce papers in the hospital, and yet he gets to run for president again. But Anthony Weiner, I mean, that's the part of what Bill Maher's saying that I agree with. But, you know, the way Anthony Weiner handled the scandal, on the other hand, and the way he ran his campaign for mayor of New York, he was really, I mean, some of the things he said were kind of nasty and not really self-reflective, and he wasn't really that self-reflective in that answer. And I noticed he started his answer with the words, what is the first thing he said there? He, let me see if I can.
I had a big feud with Chris Matthews because I was criticizing him for criticizing you when he is so in love with John F. Kennedy. And I said, where is the perspective here? What John F. Kennedy did was so much more dangerous and so much more consequential for the nation, and Clinton too. Do you understand what I'm trying to get at?
well, look, it is hard for me to do any...
It is hard for me. That is the way he started his answer, and he said that twice. If you go back and look, he said, it is hard for me twice in his answer. So I don't think he understands the way his he's being ridiculed if he's going to say that it is hard for me twice in his answer, right? Anyway, I just wanted to show that. And the other part of what Bill Maher said there is, you know, he went through that whole thing kind of rehabilitating or doing his best to rehabilitate Anthony Weiner for, you know, trying to minimize his scandal. And then there was kind of this turnaround. I want to show you this clip. Bill Maher was talking about, before the clip I'm going to show, he was talking about how he hates, there was a point in the mayor's race for New York where on the anniversary of Hurricane Sandy, they decided not to debate because they wanted to take a moment and remember. And Bill Maher was saying how he doesn't understand why it is that people take these moments to remember things that happened a year ago that weren't that big a deal. And then he also talked about the Boston Marathon and how after the Boston Red Sox won the World Series, they commemorated the Boston Marathon. And anyway, I'll show you that clip here.
but I had a big feud with Chris Matthews because I was criticizing him for criticizing you when he is in love. I also saw, the Red Sox won the World Series. Congratulations, Red Sox. Okay, so the parade, they go to the place where the marathon bombing took place, and they put the World Series statue there, and they sing God Bless America, and they say Boston Strong, and they chant USA. It was, again, a bad day. 3 people died. That's terrible. More were maimed. That's horrible. But unfortunately, that happens every day in car accidents and everything else. I mean, your city was not leveled by Godzilla.
I don't know. It was a nice moment. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you?
What's wrong with you?
That's such a nice moment. It was like so cool.
Wait a second.
I'm not even from Boston.
I single-handedly rehabilitate you, and then you give me. You give me the exact line that Lawrence O'Donnell gave
you? It's okay. Yeah, I really like that. I think that was one of the funniest moments of the interaction between Bill Maher and Anthony Weiner on last Friday's Real Time with Bill Maher on HBO. So I wanted to make sure you all got to see that. And I have one more clip I want to show you before I take a few of the comments in the discussion section really quick. I noticed Bill Maher was talking about about how there were few people who died at the Boston Marathon and a few people who were maimed, but that in the United States we really concentrate on that too much. And I don't know if we concentrated on too much, but we certainly magnify it over the way we cover certain other stories, especially in the corporate media here in the United States. And one of the stories that didn't get a lot of coverage was this typhoon that hit the Philippines and is on its way to Vietnam and China. And I don't know, maybe it's because in the death tolls I haven't heard anyone be able to count how many Americans were killed, but I want to show you this last clip talking about some of the damage in the Philippines from this typhoon. And this is from reporter Seth Doane. Is this I think this may be Face the Nation. I think this is Face the Nation. I could be wrong. Talking about how many people may have died from this super typhoon that hit the Philippines, and you can see that in this clip.
Good morning to you, Nora. A local official in the Philippines suggested as many as 10,000 people might have perished in this typhoon. That number is very different, though, when you talk with the Philippine Red Cross, which tells us 1,200 people. Those fluctuating death tolls give you an indication of just how little officials really know about the extent, the scope of this tragedy so far. It was the wind early on that got so much of the attention in this disaster, but it turned out to be the high waves and heavy surf that proved so damaging, so deadly along the coast. The Philippine government tells us around 4 million people were affected by this typhoon. 400,000 people displaced from their homes.
So yeah, that is kind of a devastating loss of life. Up to 10,000 people may have been killed by this typhoon in the Philippines. And I think of the 5 shows that I took clips from on the corporate media, I think about 2 or 3, I can't remember for sure, but at least 2 or 3 did not show anything about 10,000 people being killed by a typhoon in the Philippines, or up to 10,000, over 1,000 at least. It said the Red Cross is saying there were 1,200 people killed. So I think the way that Americans concentrate on certain tragedies like the Boston Marathon or Hurricane Sandy, that was Bill Maher's point that I was showing in that previous clip. I think there is some sort of over magnification of some events and sort of a myopic lack of interest in others. So I guess it's I've been already going for like an hour and 10 minutes here almost, so I want to take a couple questions or look at a couple comments here from the discussion section, but I got to finish up pretty quickly here. Let me see if I can find a couple on-topic questions here. Let's see, I have let me see, Third Eye 2020 says, Real Time is the best show of the week, bar none. Well, you know, I actually like Real Time with Bill Maher, even though I don't always agree with Bill Maher, even though he's supposedly on the left and somewhat libertarian, and I'm on the left and somewhat libertarian. There are a lot of, I think if you look at my videos where I take clips of Bill Maher, a majority of them are where I've taken clips of Bill Maher where I disagree with him. So there are a lot of things that he says that I like, but he has some weird opinions on a lot of things, and I think I showed clips today of him not getting that when Obama said if you like your health care plan you can keep it, that wasn't a lie, you know. And I showed some clips of him last week not getting that, and I look to the non-corporate media. I guess HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher is, you know, that's a Time Warner HBO. I think it's still owned by Time Warner, so that is still sort of corporate media. But one of the things I like about his show is that he talks about things and issues and positions on issues that you don't normally see in the corporate media, but that doesn't mean I always agree with what he says. So it is a good show, but it's not like Bill Maher. It should be taken as gospel on several different issues. So I think if you are a fan of LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup, you'll notice that I've used Bill Maher for the thumbnail of my video a lot of times, and I think he does help with the number of views I get on my videos when I put him in the thumbnail, because people like him, people don't like him, but he is at least entertaining. And I've enjoyed him as a stand-up comedian. I've seen him live as a stand-up comedian, and I've watched him. I watched his old show, Politically Incorrect, that was on ABC. I visited a live taping of that show once, so I'm a long-time fan, although not always in agreement with Bill Maher, so I appreciate that comment. Let me see here if I can take one or two more real quick and finish up. Let's see, something about, Agent Dale Chomsky says we need bullet control. Every bullet should cost $5,000. I think that was part of a Chris Rock routine. I've seen Chris Rock live too, and I remember seeing him say that same thing, that we don't need gun control, we need bullet control, and make bullets really expensive, and people will be like too cheap to shoot anyone. So I like that quote though, but I don't think Christie made any definitive statements on gun control in the clip I showed from him that I assume you're commenting on there. So let me see if I can take one or two more quick. Let's see, Mr. X00666 says, I hate right-wing leaders. Well, I don't know, I guess I've showed you have your choice of right-wing leaders. You have Ken Cuccinelli and the Tea Party, or you have Chris Christie and the establishment, and I don't know, I don't really like either, so I agree with you, I guess. Phoenix Ryder says, I don't think Oswald acted alone, never did. Well, I mean, in terms of who shot Kennedy, I haven't really seen any good evidence that it wasn't Oswald. But in terms of who influenced Oswald, and that's what John Kerry was talking about, I think there's a lot of places to be open for discussion, and a lot of lack of investigation into like what he did when he was in Mexico City and visited those embassies. And anyway, so yeah, I think that is a good comment. And anyway, I have gone way over my 1 hour time here, so I appreciate all of you showing up to watch LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup. It looks like we've got over 100, but like about 115 people watching at this point, so thank you for joining me. I think I may be making an edited, produced video upcoming this week based on this argument I've been trying to make that everybody's wrong, that Obama lied when he said if you like your health care plan, you can keep it. So I think I might make an edited, produced video about that, so look for that. And I'll be doing another LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup next Sunday at 6:30 p.m. Pacific, as I always do. And so thank you for joining me. Thanks for all the comments, and I'll see you next Sunday. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. For my U.S. viewers and people in Europe, enjoy the beginning of your Monday and your week. See you on the internet.